Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Shropshire Council's Cabinet meeting of Wednesday, the 7th of September 2022. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. And can I remind members to please identify your name and role before speaking so that it's clear to those watching the meeting as to who is doing the talking. Thank you very much indeed. So, first item on the agenda, item number 1 is apologies. We don't have any apologies today. We are all in the room. Item number 2, disposable interests. Does anybody have any disposable interests? No? Okay. Item number 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of July 2022. I am happy to propose those. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second those, Councillor Potter.
Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item number 4, public question time. Now, we have 2 public questions today, and I think Mr. Pollard, you might be reading both of them.
I'm afraid.
Okay, so the first question comes from Dr. Jamie Phillips, and will be read by Tim Pollard.
Thank you. His question is as follows. Dear councillors, I recently made an FOI request to the council asking for a full breakdown of the money spent to date on the North West Relief Road. From the response from Mr. Steve Smith on the 18th of August, I understand that the council has spent 20.4 million on preparatory work on the project between 2014-15 and the end of 2022. In the breakdown of the figures received in the FOI response, the highest single expense was on professional services costs at a total cost of 12.1 million over the period. Please could the Cabinet provide a breakdown of what this figure encompasses exactly? The term professional services costs is rather vague.
Thank you, Tim. The answer will be provided by Councillor Dean Carroll.
Am I on? These have been marked.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Thank you for the question. The £12.1 million professional service costs incurred by the North West Relief Road to date are the expected and planned project development costs incurred through Shropshire Council's term consultant WSP in line with the outline business case forecast. Key activities within the scope include, although this is not an exhaustive list, initial design work, developing detailed highways designs, development of the design around the numerous bridges and structures required, oversight of environmental and ground condition surveys, preparation and submitting the current planning application documentation and submitting further detailed responses where required by stakeholders, preparation of the required environmental statements and associated mitigation plans, engagement with supply chain and key stakeholders, landowner engagement, and ongoing preparation of the full business case. This activity at this cost and level of detail have been scoped and approved within the outline business case and is appropriate and commensurate with the requirements of both the local planning authority and the Department for Transport on a project of this scale.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Now, the second question is from Shrewsbury Town Councillor, Councillor Chris Lemon, who I don't believe is in the room. So, Tim, if you don't mind reading his question as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And the question is this. Shropshire Council has recently completed 2 zero-carbon new build school buildings at Millbrae School and Harscombe Junior School, and has rightly celebrated this achievement in the media. Of course, the local community in Radbrook welcomes these initiatives as a sign that Shropshire Council is starting to give the climate emergency the attention it needs. However, we would like to know why these high standards are not being put in place for the proposed new primary and SEND schools in the Bowbrook Meadows development. These schools are only aiming for very good building standards as opposed to the excellent achieved by the other 2 projects. The current assessment puts them at 55% green Building Research Establishment's environmental assessment method score, the minimum to achieve very good, suggesting there is a risk the completed buildings may fall below that. They appear to have no targets for low carbon energy use and are not putting in renewable energy systems. Why is Radbrook not benefiting from the experience at Meal and Halstead. This is both disappointing and short-sighted. With the steep rise in energy prices, new buildings should have renewable energy systems and low carbon design to help with future costs, as well as contributing to zero carbon for Shropshire by 2030. Please explain why this project is being designed to lower standards than at other schools. Will the plans be revised in view of the need to achieve zero carbon standards?
Thank you, Tim. And the answer will be provided by Councillor Ian Mellons. Oh, it's Dean. I apologise. Councillor Dean Carroll.
I thought I got away with one there. There is a key difference between the completed capital projects at Millbrae School and Halstead Junior School sites and the planned new builds on Beaubrook. The completed projects were procured through the council's construction frameworks and so were aligned to the climate emergency policy requirements. The new special school and the separate mainstream primary school builds in Beaubrook are being led by the Department for Education and have been procured through their school construction framework. A single contractor will build both schools, realising better value for money for the public purse from the economies of scale. The special school is being fully funded by the department through their free school programme, and the mainstream school by the council as part of its school-based planning programme. The department's framework, at the time when the contract was put out to tender, had a requirement for contractors to be built to achieve green very good for both schools. The contractors cannot be held to a higher specification post-tender. The tenders for those two schools took place in 2020. Council officers are working closely with the department and the preferred contractor to ensure that the builds deliver the highest possible energy efficiency standards. While the build requirement of the new schools is different from the completed schools projects, the standards in relation to reducing the carbon footprint are being raised to a level higher than has previously been the case for such new builds, and are affordable in the context of the current inflationary pressures in the construction marketplace.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. So that takes us to the end of the public questions. We now move on to member questions. And the first question is from Councillor Julian Dean. I've been told it's being read by Duncan Kerr, but I don't believe that he's here. So, Tim, would you?
Well, I mean, I can.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think it's best perhaps that Tim, if you can read that question, if you've got it in front of you.
Yeah. So Julian's question is this. I'm sure Cabinet will agree that effective urgent delivery of the Sustainable Warmth Programme is a top priority for the Council as we approach a winter with unprecedented fuel costs. Timely delivery of measures into the homes of those who qualify is dependent on capacity at Council level, speedy procurement and contracting and effective working with partners both at the Marches Energy Agency and in associated trades. Following a recent email from a resident who was concerned that delays might mean loft installation she is likely to qualify for might not be in place for the winter, what assurances can be given that all teams associated with the delivery of this programme are on track to deliver measures at pace?
Thank you, Tim, for reading that. And this question will be responded to by Councillor Ian Mellons.
Yeah, Councillor Ian Mellons, portfolio holder for climate change, offshore assets and the green economy. Thanks for the question. These local authority delivery and home upgrade schemes, collectively known as the Sustainable Warmth Scheme, represent the affordable warmth and energy efficiency team and government's first foray into attempting to deliver to the new whole house approach. This work is particularly challenging in Shropshire, where we have a lot of older, hard to treat properties. This is complicated and if done thoroughly has the potential to cause a lot of damage, both structurally to homes and reputationally to the council. So far we have delivered low carbon heating measures to the value of £420,000 to homes across the county. The Affordable Warmth and Energy Efficiency team now have both contracts to the value of £4.96 million in place to deliver all the major measures and funding out until the end of March 2023. Due to this, we are in negotiations with the funders to draw down more funding as we now have demonstrable capacity to deliver. As one of only 3 local authorities consulted, we have been working closely with the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy to better target their approach to assist rural areas like ourselves. The next round of funding for home upgrade will open imminently, and the team are working hard to prepare a programme of work which will significantly increase the level of works going forward. Our innovative procurement model has secured lead contractors that have agreed to bring a package of training and support whilst being actively involved in delivery for local non-accredited businesses that will enable them to fit in their own right in the future. To that end, we are hosting 2 local installer events where interested installers can meet the lead contractors and understand exactly what accreditation entails and what support is on offer. Sorry with me. The team are trialling various ways to deliver on the more difficult cases, including using structural supervisors and architects to project manage complicated jobs, and using various different funding streams such as household support fund to cover the enabling works. And we are coming across some such as works which we are coming across such as damp works, etc., which are necessary before primary measures can be installed. All of this is complicated and taking time to get right. The Affordable Warmth and Energy Efficiency team are presently working on a briefing that will explain in more detail exactly what funds we have and the measures and approaches to both developing and supporting the supply chain and delivering energy efficiency and low carbon heating measures across the county. It is worth remembering that the Affordable Warmth team only consists of 2 full-time officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that really forced response. The next question comes from Kate Harday, and once again, Councillor Tim is going to be busy. I need to call you a councillor then as well. Once again, Tim Collard will be reading this question. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. So, Councillor Haddaday's question is this. The following is an answer to a public question from the ICS board on the 29th of June on transport to the proposed health and wellbeing hub. The answer indicates that there will be a new bus route financed via Section 106 monies. Could you confirm that this is Shropshire Council's understanding? And what follows, I think, is the answer that was given. So the answer that was given at the time is this. Transport to and from the proposed Shrewsbury Health and Wellbeing Hub is a key consideration for the programme team. They will ensure that the travel and access analysis is part of an integrated impact assessment, which we will undertake as soon as we confirm the location for the hub. An integrated impact assessment will look at the impact that the change of or relocation of service could have on patients and the practices involved. And with the help and input from patients, we'll seek to identify ways to minimise any negative impacts as much as possible. We cannot undertake a full integrated impact assessment until we have agreed and secured a site for the hub. The programme is working with the council to ensure there is a specific bus route that stops next to the new hub. There are also Section 106 monies from the wider South development to support a new bus route. The modelled cost savings will be developed as part of the business case. This was a response provided at the time by Claire Parker, Director of Partnerships, and Gareth Robertson, ICB Director of Delivery and Transformation.
Thank you, Tim. The answer to this question will be provided by Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. We are aware of concerns from some patients, particularly around public transport to the preferred site, which has yet to be submitted for planning permission. The Council has always been clear that good public transport links to the site would be key and is looking into potential public transport options. Shropshire Council will feed this back to the ICS as part of the process. This will include scoping and understanding the transport requirements for the Health and Wellbeing Hub, which will help to define the model and costs associated with this and how this may be funded. Whilst the Council can support with mapping and options and link to transport providers, Shropshire Council will not be funding transport to the site. It is likely that there would need to be an ongoing revenue commitment as part of the proposal to support transport. But until the development proposals are defined for a particular site, the details of the transport need will not be clear. As part of any future planning application, the transport provision will need to be assessed and any requirements funded by the developer.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. The next question we have is from Councillor Rob Wilson, who's joining us online. Rob, over to you.
Thank you very much. In the Shropshire Star on the 25th of August, Daniel Kaczynski was quoted as saying that taxpayers will already have to pay more for the North West Relief Road. Please do tell the taxpayers of Shropshire how much more they will have to pay and what amount does this administration consider too high a burden for taxpayers?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Answer to be provided by Councillor Dean Carroll.
Thank you, Leader. I have to admit, a little surprised to see the question and the answer being discussed on Twitter this morning before the question had even been asked in Cabinet. And although the documents are on the public website, I thought it would have been a courtesy to at least have asked the question and had the response in the meeting before posting it on social media. But nevertheless, I will give the answer as written, that the Council is still developing its detailed design and monitoring market prices, and as such, do not have a definitive likely cost at this time. Should planning approval be granted, a full business case will be developed for submission to the Department of Transport to release funding.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor Wilson, do you have a supplementary?
Just one quick one. Regarding residents, I wonder if Councillor Carroll would like to comment on the disruption that residents in Copthorne, particularly Shelton and Dalton Drive, have experienced recently.
I assume Councillor Wilson is referring to the drilling that took place for environmental testing requirements. I assume that that's what he's referring to.
That's correct.
I believe that we have already apologised for any disruption caused to local residents and disturbance caused. I have no further comment to make on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And the final member's question comes from Councillor Kate Halliday. Once again, will be read by Tim Collard.
Thank you. Our question is this. A recent poll suggested that almost 1 in 4 households are planning not to use heating at all this winter due to the soaring cost of energy, and many more are planning to cut back on how long their heating will be on. Many councils are planning to use public spaces such as libraries, community centres and museums as warm banks to allow people who may not have a heated home to gather in places to have that heating. Is Shropshire Council planning to provide warm banks?
Thank you, Tim. Answer to be provided by Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you. I'm going to have to slightly ad-lib this one because, as you can see, I am totally tech-free today, so no more from my own. However, no, it's all right, John. Okay, but actually, let me just say something else anyway. Thank you. We certainly welcome those that need a safe, dry and warm space this winter to our publicly accessible venues. Individuals already access our buildings, especially libraries, to keep warm, to keep dry and to keep safe. And we interact with them in a professional and caring way to see if any additional services can be provided or signposted. However, in response to the current cost of living crisis, a working group has been set up which includes staff from public health and culture, leisure and tourism to consider how best we can extend the warm bank principles to other publicly accessible venues during the colder months and help more people who are struggling. This group will engage with other community organisations to ensure there are places for people to go across the county, and it will also consider how to provide activities and refreshments for people in need. As a customer-focused organisation, we understand our role and the important part that our public buildings play to communities and the individuals who access them daily, and we will monitor and manage the situation to ensure that our buildings remain accessible, safe and welcoming to those in need.
Thank you, Councillor Motley. So, moving on now to the main agenda. Item number 6 is scrutiny items. There are no scrutiny items today, so moving on to item number 7, which is budget consultation and alternative budget report. Councillor Gwen Butler.
Good morning. It's Councillor William Butler here, portfolio holder for finance and corporate resources. If we wind back to last winter, when we looked at the budget setting process, we were certainly hindered by a by-election, and after we went through the process and we had the consequential consultation at full council and after full council, there was some criticism of the processes that we actually delivered. To that end, I agreed to in a very transparent way, to send alternative arrangements through performance management scrutiny to actually understand and put together a timetable, which I believe will give every single member of this council the opportunity to actually be engaged in the budget setting process, and also for us as an administration to give the opposition the full opportunity to have costed alternatives that we can have due diligence and understanding as to whether their validity or not, and whether we are prepared to accept them. But I believe that in the light of transparency and moving forward for the residents of Shropshire, this is by far the best way forward, Leader. Give me 1 second. And to that end, I would obviously like to just remind members to look at the appendices and the appropriate timetables for putting forward alternative budgets. And to that end, I would just like to move the recommendation as in 3.1, consider the information relating to the current budget processes and recommend to Council an approach for future budget consultations, brackets Appendix 2, and an alternative budget process. At this stage, as it's been through performance management scrutiny twice, I believe we should go with this document, and should we need to revisit it, we do so after we tried the proposals in front of you. I move the recommendations, Leader.
Thank you very much, Graham. Do I have a second of that?
Yeah, Councillor Gittins happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vasner, you have a question.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I welcome these proposals. They have been through performance review scrutiny, and I was there when they were discussed, and I think they're very useful and great improvement from last year. So I very much welcome, particularly the application of the Gunning principles, which I think is very important. The only thing I've got to say about it, really, in terms of concern, is that the resources are made available to the opposition parties to actually generate some of the ideas that they've got. I do worry because obviously we are not particularly well resourced in terms of officer support. And I was hoping that we might maybe have discussions about this at another time, but maybe we ought to look into what support we may be able to have in order to develop our ideas, because obviously they need to be fleshed out. I think there's mention in the report of different departments looking at the proposals we have for different areas of the council's activities, and maybe it would be useful to have some support in those areas, and I would welcome some discussions around that before we actually start the process formally, I think at the end of October.
I'll come back on that one if you like. To my knowledge, you have access to officers anyway. I certainly wouldn't be looking to increase resources purely for that basis, but you have access to the finance team, which you had last time. So I don't really understand your point, to be honest, David, because I think you know, in some ways you've got as much access, as has every member, to officers as anybody else. So I think it's down to you actually to make sure that you make the best use of the officer time that you get. But to my knowledge, no officer has ever refused to meet with you.
That's great. Thanks very much, and we will pursue that with your assistance.
Thank you. Could I just make one further
You
comment?
certainly can.
I think by putting a firm timetable in place as well, and the fact that the template goes out on the 31st of October, and it has to be in by a due date, it focuses everybody to actually know what they've got to do and by when. And I think it's getting the ducks in a row, isn't it? And then officers allocating the appropriate time should there be need to do so. Like I said in the introduction, let's go with this one this year, David. If we do experience difficulties, we can review it through performance scrutiny next year.
And I think it is worth pointing out this document's got to go to full council anyway, David, so we'll have another chance to look at it then. But like William said, I think one of the most important things for me is that the timeline actually allows the opposition to come up with alternative ideas, and more importantly, it actually gives us the time to actually give them the due diligence, because it was difficult last year, as you know, but last year was last year. So I have no more hands in the room or online, so we have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So moving on, it is a bit of the Gwilym show today. I mean, he's probably already apologised for that, but item number 8 is the annual Treasury report. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Sorry. Thank you, Leader. Again, this is general housekeeping which we have to do under CIPFA regulations, the annual Treasury report. I believe the officers have worked exceedingly well over the past 12 months. I'm not going to go into the report in great detail. Just move recommendation number 3.1. Members are asked to accept the position as set out in the report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Can we have a second to that one?
Thanks very much. I have to second that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on that one? No, all very good. We have a proposal, we have a second. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 9, the financial monitoring report, quarter 1. Councillor Gwilym Butler.
Thank you, Leader. I present the quarter 1 financial outturn report, which highlights the uncharted waters which we are currently in. We see daily the impact of the war in Ukraine and its impact on supply chains, inflation and crippling fuel costs. When we set this budget last winter, we were assuming an inflation rate of circa 2 to 3%. I can predict that had that been achieved nationally to date, the outturn report we would have today would be very different, and I would imagine it would probably be balanced budget or thereabouts. We are seeing every part of society and the commercial world being affected by the impact of fuel prices. I'm pleased we now have a new cabinet and central government and look forward to understand the policies they will put in place to ease the current situation. We as an administration have already written to the new Prime Minister explaining the situation as seen by us and all the businesses and residents in Shropshire. Hopefully the level of support will be explained in quarter 2 report, and with the figures coming out in quarter 3 performance report. I've also asked officers to put together information for us all to lobby our MPs on the current impact of inflation in Shropshire's local government. This is not unique to Shropshire, and I am aware the Leader is in contact with several leaders of other councils with the same, if not worse, scenarios. We need to reopen the dialogue with the new government, making our case both on levelling up and inflationary support to enable us to maintain the delivery of our services which our residents deserve, and to drive the capital programme and the economic recovery in this county, which is vital. Internally, we are taking measures to ensure every part of the organisation is focused on delivering to the savings plan, as well as it delivers the Shropshire plan. On that note, I would just like to say a few words about the staff. They have in the past 2 years been resolving the issues around COVID, and with little respite have been thrown straight into the next crisis. I, for one, knew we were just winding down the COVID task and finish groups, and we decided we wouldn't wind it down, we'd use it for the cost of living crisis. I salute them, and I thank them for their ongoing dedication and drive to deliver to our new Shropshire plan and the new target operating model whilst dealing with the inflationary crisis. In my update in July, I stated that we will bring items to Cabinet and Council as and when required, and I will continue to do so. Leaders, I move the recommendations 3.1 A and B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler, and I'm happy to second those recommendations. Councillor Basman.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for this report and obviously the work of the staff in preparing it. It contains a number of concerns really about the future financial health of this authority. And I'm particularly concerned about the fact that the overspend is predicted between 4.2 million to 17.5 million. The estimate is 9.4 million, and our budgeted general reserves are 15.5 million. So in other words, we are very close to a situation where we have exhausted all our budgeted general reserves. And I think it's for the future of the authority going forward beyond this financial year, it is very, very worrying. And I am concerned, given the attitude of the new government towards public spending and towards tax cuts, that we are not going to get a great deal of support from them in going forward. In particular, I'd be interested to have some information about the tactical budget review, which is mentioned in the July report, which said that inflationary space savings would be made to offset the effect of inflation at that time. I would like a bit more detail about that. I'm also concerned about in this report, there's clearly savings are designed to be kind of either red, amber or green, and there are a number of amber rated savings which are incorporated in the estimate for the overspend. I wonder whether that's over optimistic and whether the estimate for the overspend of 9.4 million is going to be heading towards 17.5 million more than, and therefore our general reserves could well be actually exhausted this year. I'd also like to know how the estimates of the reserves have been calculated between low, medium and high, and also the treatment of inflation. Obviously, inflation is very difficult to predict in the current climate and is going up and up and up. But I noticed that in the last report, it was kind of the estimate with the effect of inflation is 8.3 million. Now it's estimated to be 5 million, which seems extraordinary. I'll just be interested in some more feedback on that, and particularly on whether the authority has been able to actually fix some of its costs by negotiating contracts with fixed costs. So yes, I mean, I welcome this report. I'm very, very concerned about the financial health of the authority and whether this authority will actually exhaust its budgeted general reserves this year, with the consequence that the following year there could be very, very serious cuts facing it, and services could be decimated. And I really, really would be interested to know what about the thinking beyond this financial year, when, as I say, we could actually exhaust most of our budgeted general reserves.
Thank you, Councillor Plasma. Councillor Julia Buckley joining us online.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I also welcome the report, and I particularly appreciate Gwilym Butler's verbal update. Councillor Butler, I'm really pleased to hear that you're already engaging with your new Conservative government and that you're lobbying, and I honestly do hope that that is more successful going forward. That's really good news today, so thank you for being quick off the mark doing that. I think this is the top priority, the most important report today, and I'm a bit disappointed there isn't more detail. We're told to expect a £9.37 million overspend, and my understanding, Councillor Vasmer, is that we don't want to use our reserves. Instead, we're asked to consider mitigating actions. I don't find any detail of those mitigating actions. The only two things I could scrape around to find are escalating selling of assets and looking at increasing the Stepping Stones project. Now, the problem with selling assets, as we know, as you've pointed out, is that that has been delayed over the last 2 years, and there's no sign that any of the factors in the capital, in construction market and sales market, that any of those factors have changed in terms of being able to speed up sales of assets. I also have a concern that when we ask staff to work from home because we've sold the buildings, we are in fact pushing the cost of living onto our staff. That doesn't feel very fair at the moment. But my main concern is it's not really a sustainable way forward. I think all of us here across every party could agree the issue of inflation rising is not a temporary problem just for this report, just for this quarter, and probably, unfortunately, not just for this financial year. So the idea that we can keep selling the silver, a one-shot solution, doesn't fit the problem. So you talk about rising demand because of cost of living and scarily increasing inflationary issues. Neither of those are going to be solved quickly. So we're going to be faced with this problem again in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months and 12 months. And there will come a point where there are no more assets to sell. What is most interesting is that Councillor Gwilym Butler was quoted on the BBC Radio Shropshire on the 1st of September, telling everybody that because of this inflationary pressures, the council faces difficult decisions. And the difficult decisions it faces are deciding what we need to stop doing. That wasn't in the report to members. So I think it's important that if this administration is going to consider stopping or reducing any services, that you really must bring that to elected members before you tell the BBC. So I think there might be some detail missing here as to what it is that you plan to cut to close the gap. And if there is nothing missing, then we really do need to come up with a more sustainable solution to this longer term problem of inflation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I don't have any other hands in the room. Graham, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, awful lot to be covered there to a certain extent. David, a lot of what you're saying I have a tendency to agree with, and I think it's, as I've said before in July, this is an issue for local government nationally. Just to let you know, the inflationary figures does include £8 million for staff pay, which is put down. But I would ask you, if you've got detailed bits that you need more information about, if you drop me an email and I will get officers to respond to you. It's too much to cover today, unfortunately. We're one of the only a few councils to include HMRC tax-free weekly allowance to help with the costs. We've extended this across the winter to the end of March to obviously help staff, etc. I did actually say in my introduction, again, I repeat myself, uncharted waters. And I think we may be looking at, hopefully we'll be looking at a slightly different situation once we know what the policy is of the new central government. I do take on board Councillor Buckley's comments about how we change and how we actually resolve our financial situation. I'm confident that as an organisation, we are moving forward and we have the tools in place to actually look at changing the organisation under the Shropshire Plan. When we put the budget forward, the target operating model is part of our transformation programme, which will deliver those savings. However, as Councillor Buckley has stated, and I will not run away from the fact, things will have to change. I also put in my preamble that I will bring forward to Cabinet and Council when any decisions have to be made, and we will be transparent if we have to change things and if we have to stop doing things. But at this stage, with a new central government, I don't think we should jump out the hat too soon until we actually know what figures we are playing with. However, I will bring back to Cabinet so every member of this council will have full opportunity to see any appropriate changes, and they will not just be pushed through. So, and I'll leave it at that, Leader.
Thank you, Graham. I mean, I suppose the comment, there's a couple of comments from you really, I suppose. I think it proves just how well this organisation is working, because if you look at the figure that we were estimating last year, Q1, it's very similar to the figure now. And last year we didn't have the inflationary pressures we have now. So there is, tremendous work being done by officers and I'm going to say by portfolio holders who are, who are really focusing on bringing this in as much as possible. Q1 is always a really difficult report because we don't know how things are going to play out. The one thing we do know this year is that, I've said that phrase once, I think Gwen said it once, we've said it 30 times, we are all in uncharted waters at the moment, and local government is in a particularly difficult position. We did write to Liz Truss extremely quickly because, like every other local government leader, we are seeing these pressures day in, day out, and as those pressures come to fruition, the demand for some of our services increases. So it's a perfect storm. So many maritime references today. But I've got absolute confidence in the way that officers are working with cabinet members in I'm going to use the word attacking because it is attacking. We are almost on a sort of pandemic footing again, only this time it's the cost of living. So, Q1 is always a difficult report, but like Willem, when we have to make some difficult decisions, depending on what the government say, if we have to make decisions, they will be done in an open, transparent manner. So I have no further hands in the room. I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour of quarter one report, thank you very much indeed. So moving on now to the Treasury Management Update quarter one report, Councillor Graham Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Hopefully this will be the last one from me today. Give somebody else a chance. Again, this is general housekeeping. It's interesting with the slight increase in interest rates has had a bit of a bounce for our income, and it's only slightly. But I'm also interested to see the future vision for interest rates, because it looks as though they aren't going to go up substantially. That's the view, and then they will peak at 2.5, 2 3/4, and then probably slide back as to boost the economy. And that's what, fingers crossed, that is what will continue. Again, the officers are doing a really good job here, and I just ask members to accept the position as set out in the report, figure 3.1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rotten. Do you want a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that Councillor Simon Jones, portfolio holder for adult social care and public health.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I don't have any hands in the room or online. I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. You may now stand down, Graham. Moving on to item number 11, performance monitoring report quarter one. Despite what it says in the agenda, this is actually Councillor Rob Gittins' report, not Councillor William Butler's.
Thank you very much, Leader. Overall performance in quarter one is still positive. 7 key deliverables are reported as green and one as red. 6 measures show an improvement in the performance. 7 measures remain at the same level. 1 measure shows a decline. 6 measures are not appropriate for reporting due to seasonal variances. And also, with the approval of the Shropshire Plan in May 2022, we promised that we would be changing and improving our performance reporting going forward. This is this is the first report that we produced using the new Shropshire Plan format. It is only the start and is in there complete at the moment, but hopefully gives a taster of the changes to come. The performance portal has had a complete rebuild to reflect the Shropshire Plan priorities, and more measures will be added as each quarterly report progresses. All of the measures are deliverables in Appendix 1 have been added to the portal. There are also a number of previous measures that have been migrated and updated after this report was written. With the addition of the Shropshire Plan, measures being identified over the coming months, the portal will shift to include more reporting via our interactive reporting tool in Power BI. This will enable members and the public to access the relevant performance data, benchmarking information and commentary. So if I could ask the Cabinet to consider and endorse the recommendations 3.1 and 3.2 of the Cabinet data, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gittins. Do I have a seconder for that report?
Councillor Kirsty Hurst-Knight, portfolio holder for children and education, happy to second. Leader.
Thank you. First comment from me actually is that for anybody who's had to trawl through these reports on a regular basis, the new format is a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Gittins. Councillor Vasner.
Yes, thank you. I welcome this report and the development of the monitoring. I just wanted to ask a question about section 7.3. When fully developed, the framework will be reported via an interactive reporting tool. This will enable members and public to access the relevant performance data, benchmarking information commentary. That's going to be very, very useful. I wondered when we might expect that to be operational.
Not a question I can answer, Councillor Gittins.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Vasner. Yeah, that is something that we are still working on, and it will be delivered as fast as possible. Thank you.
No further hands in the room. I have a proposer and another seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the last item of the agenda, but last certainly not least, Item number 12, Whitchurch Swimming and Fitness Centre. Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm Councillor Cecilia Motley, member for the Corvedale and portfolio holder for, now let me remember it again, communities, culture, leisure, tourism and transport. And I'm pleased to be able to bring this report to Cabinet about the progress being made with regard to the Whitchurch Swimming and Fitness Centre. Members will recall that on the 27th of April, Cabinet agreed that we should get going on a formal public consultation exercise and then bring a further report back to Cabinet following completion of the consultation. And also agree that subject to the outcome of the public consultation exercise and our consideration of that report, the business case for the project should go to Council, which hopefully it will do in September, with a recommendation that the development of the Whitchurch Swimming and Fitness Centre be included in the capital programme. Well, we've now completed the public consultation, and I'm pleased to advise members that it was very well supported. There was overwhelming support for a proposed new swimming and fitness centre. We have to remember that Whitchurch has been without its pool since COVID, and that there was no chance of reviving the pool because it simply was impossible to do that, which is why we started in 2021 looking at a completely alternative solution for Whitchurch and came up with the idea not just of the swimming pool but also the fitness centre as well. So there were 286 respondents, 89% were happy with the location, and that's quite important because the location is in its present position and it's in a very accessible part of the town. There's a lot of parking around and it is, I'm glad to see that the population were happy with that location. And they were also, a majority was happy with the proposed facility mix for the fitness centre, which will also include meeting rooms and as well as fitness equipment and obviously a cafe as well. So this is a very different proposition for Whitchurch from that which it had previously. Interesting though, numbers arriving by car, 77 arriving by car as opposed to 59% by foot and 30% by cycle. So we need to see if we can't improve the walking and cycling element there. The one concern which was raised by quite a number of people was the fact that there is a serious water vole habitat on the site in the stream, and this we will make sure that we will investigate this because we are very conscious of the fact that we need to do this with as little damage to wildlife as possible. Going to 2.3, the total cost of the facility is now estimated at £13.1 million. Members will have had a chance to read the feasibility study for the new centre. We want the rebuild to proceed as quickly as possible, particularly bearing in mind the inflationary pressures, and we're hoping very much that despite the estimate that we will be able, hopefully, to come in below that, we will be watching the pennies very, very carefully on this project. Providing development to the next stage goes as planned, we want the building of this facility to start in 2024 and the new centre completed in 2025. So I would like to ask that Cabinet accept the recommendations as in item 3, agreeing the business case with the initial budget funded from the Public Works Loan Board, acknowledge the significant average annual revenue pressure arising from the approval of this scheme. There's no point hiding that. We will have a revenue pressure, and recommend that the council delegate resolution of this pressure to the Director of Place, Mark Barrow, and myself, and that the council also delegates authority to Mark Barrow and myself to procure, negotiate and agree the terms of any agreement and contracts necessary for the delivery of the project, which are stated obviously in the bottom of page 70, item 3 there. there's a full report. One of the issues that I think is bound to be raised is the question of building standards, and we are determined that we should be building as near to BREEAM standards as we possibly can. We feel that that's terribly important, and we're also ensuring that that we're going to be using as little energy as possible in this, which I think is terribly important given the present situation that we're in. So we will be looking at air and all ground source heat pumps and proper insulation as per BREEAM standards to ensure that we are really coming up with an eco-friendly building here. So the report is as before you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Do I have a seconder for that?
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Dean Cowell, Portfolio Holder for Physical Infrastructure. Delighted to second this report and welcome Councillor Motley's work on this to bring it to this stage, but also to pay tribute to the local Shropshire councillors, to Councillor Peggy Muller, Councillor Gerald Dakin and Councillor Tom Biggins, who have been campaigning on this issue for a number of years, since before even the previous poll was closed, and without their input in keeping it high on the agenda, we would not be here at this stage now. But also to bring everybody's attention and remind everybody, actually, Leader, about your involvement in this and your commitment to this before you became Leader as the previous portfolio holder. Before the last election, you made a commitment as portfolio holder for Culture and Leisure then that we would deliver this replacement pool for the people of Whitchurch, and we are delivering this replacement pool for the people of Whitchurch. And this is a fantastic project, fantastic report, and I wholeheartedly endorse it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Now we have one of the local members here who would like to say a few words and also, I think, to ask Cecilia a question. Councillor Peggy Muller.
Well, Dean's just stolen my first thunder. Thank everybody. My other one, at surgery last week, I was asked about how eco-friendly our pool is going to be. It's obviously top of people's agenda now.
And as I think I've told you already, Peggy, we are going to be doing it to the highest possible standards we can, including BREEAM. And we're ensuring that we keep a very, very close eye on the energy costs as well. So I think you will find that this should be a leader in its field.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm going to bring Councillor Basma in a moment. One of the things, Peggy, is that swimming pools are not necessarily the most ecologically friendly or environmentally friendly facilities, but there is a significant amount of work going on in that field at the moment, because obviously from before the energy crisis it was important that we conserved as much energy. The one thing I do just want to point out to members, as Cecilia mentioned it, if you go back a few reports, the original cost was 12.1 million. We've added an additional £1 million to that, or in further reports, to ensure that we have got the cost covered for inflation. The reason this is being delegated is, I'm sure everybody around the table will understand, if we have to keep coming back to Cabinet and full council every time we need to make a minor change, the inflation costs will only get worse. So which is why we're delegating it to Cecilia and the Director of Place. From our perspective, we want to get this facility open as soon as is practically possible. Councillor Basma.
Thank you, and I too welcome this development, and I welcome the fact that it's being to be very green and environmentally friendly building. I think it'd be great for the people of Whitchurch, and just pay tribute to all the people in Whitchurch who campaigned for this, including to my Lib Dem colleagues who have campaigned and raised petitions on it on many occasions. But nevertheless, I'd like to say it's a great day for Whitchurch, and I do hope, that by 2025 they will have the best facilities that we can provide.
Thank you, David. Councillor Julia Buckley.
Thank you. I also welcome this announcement. It's fantastic news, and it's long overdue, isn't it, for the people of Whitchurch who've had nowhere to swim for all these years. Could I ask a related question, please? What news is there of the swimming pool at the Quarry in Shrewsbury, which I believe is currently still closed?
Me or you, Cecilia?
You can do that. I'll follow up.
Okay. Let me just be clear that the swimming pool in Shrewsbury is not closed, Julia. We have 4 pools in Shrewsbury. One of them is closed, and that is due to an issue with the roof. The guys and girls on ropes have been up into the roof, and we are waiting for a cost analysis of that. And we would, depending on what that cost analysis is, we hope to get that resolved and get that pool reopened. Cecilia?
No, that's absolutely it. And we're working very hard on the quarry. We want the quarry to be up and running again as quickly as possible. So we're not sitting on our hands on this at all.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Okay.
Great day. Just been so keen to get this one over the line. I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, members. That brings us to the end of the cabinet meeting for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. We're offline. Thank you very much, everybody.
We've got 5 minutes to go.